while I was preparing for this episode, there are so many things that over the years the Constitution has been discussed about. Like, it has been discussed and debated in the public from multiple angles for legitimate reasons and then for completely nonsense reasons. Then there were so many aspects of the formation of the Constitution itself. I ended up reading a large part of the debate that was there in the Constituent Assembly while the Constitution was being formed. It is extremely interesting to go into the history of what happened during the formation and everything. But as far as debate and discussion in the public realm is concerned, right, we are going to talk about both of these things, both the legitimate and the completely nonsense reasons. My father, Jesus Christ, used to wake up in the morning, early morning, 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m. And then we'll switch on either songs or news at this loud-ass volume so that the entire house also wakes up. And then
my grandfather used to do it. My grandfather used to get up at 4:30, do all of his shit before 6 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock he would be in his easy chair, reclining and putting on the old Khatara chota sa radio he used to have. Same radio he used throughout his life. The same radio.
Nice.
Chota sa ek aisa tha. So he used to crank that up on full volume, have his coffee while reclining and listening to the news every single day without fail.
But that's you doing it on your own, which is very nice. Like, I get it. I get wanting to have a few hours to yourself, either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day before the chaos of life takes over, That's fine. Yeah. My dad would wake up every single person in the house and then himself promptly go back to sleep in the afternoon when none of us can sleep in the afternoon. So it was just... and I mean, he used to do all these random things too. And because he used to wake up so early in the morning, he would also feel really, really sleepy in the afternoon, no matter what is happening. So if guests would come over, right? Like when he used to come to India, we used to call over guests, obviously, to have lunch and everything. After lunch is done, he'll be sitting sensibly. Usually what people do is once you have your meal, then you sit down and chat with your guests, etc. My dad would finish the meal. Everybody would sit on the sofa, and then my dad would be like, "Chalo, okay." Okay. Immediately after. And whether you are ready to leave or not, he then after 10 minutes goes inside and sleeps. So now it's everybody else's
best. इतना shameless होना चाहिए.
That was probably the modern equivalent of serving a cold shoulder, probably.
Oh, yes.
He was literally giving them his own cold shoulder. Like, fuck right off now, I'm going to sleep. So...
It was so funny watching him do that. The guests never knew how to react. It was so ridiculous. Prakar, what's up with your new house?
Till the work is still under construction. Like the washrooms and all are almost done. The flooring is pending. My studio is still pending. So a lot of work because there's a Graph 4 again implemented in Delhi. So the work is again at a very slow pace or almost not being done at all.
Oh. Where do you all meet for where does your band meet for the sessions, for practicing and all of that?
So we book jam pads. We have these rooms where you can go and practice. We used to do that earlier pads. Also. Yeah.
Nice.
We used to jam there even before my studio, but it's more convenient, it's more spacious, it's more convenient because then we know that we have these 2 hours only to practice, so we are more focused. If we do practice at my house, we know it's my place, we can just relax, chill. We waste a lot of time. So we prefer practicing at a jam pad because we know that we are paying money and we only have 2 hours to do the work.
Fair.
Yeah. But my studio was only for me. Like we practice here because it's convenient and we have a space, and we if we don't have a jam pad available, we practice here. But
And you don't have to
the
pay
room
money.
that is true, that is true. Although I am paying money, like for electricity or whatever, but that's besides the point. The point is that this room is basically just for me. For like the size and all, I planned it accordingly,
So
that
it's
so
very
that I can
small.
practice my own. Yeah, not very big. But the new one is slightly bigger than this one, the previous one.
We'll also record our
We
podcast
can
over
do.
there a couple of times. It'll be fun. Yeah, yeah.
When are
Let's
you
do
guys
that.
going for that Linkin Park thing? That's in Mumbai, no? Sometime.
Yeah, it's 24th and 25th. So I'm going on 24th and I'll be back 26th morning.
24th as in Jan 24th?
Yeah.
And you'll be back on 26th?
Yeah.
26th is the day this episode will be going out.
It is also the day the Constitution of India was adopted.
Yeah.
Which leads
For
me
our
perfectly to the topic that we are going to talk about.
You're welcome, Ashmita.
बताओ यहाँ पे भी अश्विता का थंडर छीन लिया.
What? I literally walked her into that segue.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. That is
Bro,
true.
मेरी डेट आई उसके बाद आया, ठीक है? So give me a little more credit.
Okay, you are the one who did it.
No, of course
I only
not.
prepared the
It's
entire
always
episode.
Sandy. No, wait, it's not, because the next time I'm pretty sure then you guys be like, Prakhar, you lead us to the topic.
No, I will always default to Sandy in this because Sandy just does it well. So don't worry. I mean, so Sandy suggested that this is a good time to talk about the Indian Constitution. So here we are. That's how we are talking about this. And while I was preparing for this episode, there are so many things that over the years the Constitution has been discussed about. Like, it has been discussed and debated in the public from multiple angles for legitimate reasons and then for completely nonsense reasons. Then there were so many aspects of the formation of the Constitution itself. I ended up reading a large part of the debate that was there in the Constituent Assembly while the Constitution was being formed. It is extremely interesting to go into the history of what happened during the formation and everything. But as far as debate and discussion in the public realm is concerned, right, we are going to talk about both of these things, both the legitimate and the completely nonsense reasons, right? So, one, the very legitimate issue of the drafting committee of the Constitution, who it included, who it excluded, what were the consequences of that. That is a very, very legitimate issue that we are going to talk about. The other completely useless issue that we are going to talk about is how our favorite, the RSS, created a completely ridiculous non-issue when the Constitution was adopted. So we're going to delve into both of these, and we are going to dive into some muddy waters here. So we are going to kick off with a little bit of history of the formation of the Constitution itself, right? And we start not from 1950 or from 1947, but from 1919, 1919, right? And this was arguably one of the most important years in the history of what was to become free India. Right?
1919, the freedoms, it started in 1919, right? The freedom struggle, or it was some war happened, something happened in 1919.
The First World War ended in 1919.
Nothing to do with any of that. So for our particular, direction of history, basically what happened was Jallianwala Bagh sort of kicked it off. So in April 1990, Jallianwala Bagh massacre happened. It was a consequence of a lot of political unrest because of the British being the asshole colonizers that they were. We can't get into the details of Jallianwala Bagh massacre, right? We'll end up staying here till tomorrow.
Yeah.
But the key pointers that we should note are that in March 1919, the British passed the Rowlatt Act, which is their version of the UAPA Act, right? under which the police could arrest anybody.
For those who don't know UAPA, can you just briefly tell them what UAPA is?
So the UAPA, or the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, essentially, under this law, you can be arrested. The police can arrest you on the mere suspicion of unlawful activities. That was exactly what the Rowlatt Act was. Right? We changed nothing. So after the Rowlatt Act was passed, because there were sensible people in the country, there were protests, followed by the arrest of certain leaders away from the public eye. This happened in Amritsar, which led to even more protests, which led to a riot, which led to eventually Dyer just shooting a bunch of people who had gathered in a park and were literally just chatting there, like standard British stuff, nothing what is it? I forgot the most common word. I've genuinely forgotten.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
What is the opposite of standard, regular things?
Unorthodox.
Extraordinary.
Irregular.
Nothing extraordinary. Yes. Wow, that took me so long to reach, and that also Prakhar reached. Anyway, so obviously.
What the fuck?
But I couldn't find a very regular word.
And then I did, and you had to.
What? And then I was taking the credit for it, and then I realized I did not, so I passed the credit back to you. Praka, that was very
sounded sarcastic, by the way. It sounded very sarcastic.
No, I was not being sarcastic.
I couldn't think of it, and then Prakhar did it.
Because I couldn't think of it.
It
Sandy, what are you saying?
We should have an alt version of the DKDC logo with AD and HD, and one behind Ashmita and one behind Prakhar. I think that will look very nice.
Sure. Okay.
Wow.
Now, obviously, after the massacre, there was a lot of public unrest, but also politically a lot of things started shifting, right? So by the end of 1919, the British Parliament had passed the Government of India Act 1919. This act was meant to pass on the governance of India to Indians, but instead it introduced diarchy, that is a dual set of government. Certain areas were being passed on to the would-be Indian elected representatives, but areas like defense, the military specifically, then foreign affairs and communications, they would fully remain under the control of British Viceroy. So, the things that would allow British to continue having control in India would not change, right? While the intention of this Government of India Act 1919 was to pass on the governance. So that was not happening, right? Just think about it. There was the Rowlatt Act, and then there was the Government of India Act. The British were scrambling to sort of figure out how to retain the control, and India was getting more and more agitated. Indian leaders were rejecting a lot of the things that British were doing. This year, 1919, was the year that kicked all of this off, right? Now, when the Government of India Act 1919 was passed, the Indian National Congress basically rejected the act. But there were a bunch of leaders within INC who were ready to cooperate with the British under this act. Despite all of these, so of course, the political unrest continues. So despite all of this conflict, the act was passed, and the British government had declared that a commission would be sent to India after 10 years to examine the effects and operations of the constitutional reforms and to suggest further reforms. So they were like, we are going to help you become the dominion of India, right? Like what Commonwealth countries were, when they were gaining independence, that's what they were doing, which is dominion, where it was independent, but a lot of British interference was still there, right?
That's why the viceroys were still appointed, right? The whole point of the viceroy was to sort of keep an eye on affairs in all the Commonwealth nations.
Forget about
right?
keep an eye on affairs. They would still have control of the military, the foreign affairs, the communication. You cannot talk to the people in your country without the viceroy, the British viceroy. So, and that's the best way to maintain control. You have the arms and the public in your, side, right? So this commission that they would send after 10 years This was the infamous Simon Commission, right? If there's one thing I remember from my school's history, my history teacher was really bad, okay? She basically just took the book and read out paragraphs from a very boringly written textbook in her very boring voice in front of the class. She did not teach us anything.
Were the Mughals there in your textbook, Ashmita?
Obviously.
Okay.
I went to school when history was still history and not fiction. So
Why I mentioned that for the odd listener or viewer who doesn't know the reference is because the Mughals are no longer there in our history textbooks. So during our time, they were very much a part of the history
yeah,
textbooks.
during history, they were very much a part of history. So now, but so basically our teacher, my teacher was the reason I shit on my teacher for some reason. Because this is the only thing that I remember from school, the go back Simon thing. Do you all remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Simon, go back.
Simon, go back.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it was Lala Lajpat Rai who was injured,
And died.
Yeah,
right? During that
And
protest
Yeah.
over there.
yes.
yeah. He was hit on the head, I think.
Yeah, he was hit.
Yeah.
He was beaten up by the police and he died a few days later because of that. Okay. So this was the
Yeah.
commission that was supposed to, the same commission that was supposed to be sent actually in 1929, but it was sent in 1927, 2 years before, where they would see what was going on in the constitutional reforms, how was it working, and they would suggest further reforms. This obviously led to more political unrest. The main problem was that the commission did not include a single Indian, despite the fact that it was essentially decide the future of Indians, right? So the Indian National Congress, at its meeting in December of 1927, this is the very, very famous Madras, now Chennai meeting, right, where they boycotted the commission. This was also a very important turn in the history of India and eventually leading to the constitution, because there were very few areas where we would collaborate across the board, especially Hindus and Muslims. And this was one of them where we did. So a faction of the Muslim League led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah also decided to boycott the commission, right? And in September 1928, a memorandum was drafted. So this is a little less than a year later. A memorandum was drafted by All Parties Conference, where all of these guys came together. This was under the chairmanship of Motilal Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru's father, to appeal for a new dominion status and a federal setup of the government for the Constitution of India. So dominion status, we talked about it. It's basically independence in some form, right? And a federal setup, which means that the states of the country, states of India, would determine there would be self-governing, right? This was called the Nehru Report and the first draft of sorts for the Indian Constitution, right? So when India got independence from the British in 1947, this draft, this report, substituted the Government of India Act 1919, forming the India Independence Act 1947. But it was still an act that was passed by the British Parliament, and India was still a dominion state. So at this time, the Constituent Assembly of India was formed in 1947, which was the legislative body of the Dominion of India still. And over the next 2 years, 11 months and 18 days, they wrote the Constitution as we know it today, with amendments later on. But that was how the Constitution came into being, right? It has a lot.
I mean, if they had Google Docs or Microsoft Word around that time, they could have done it in 2 days flat. I mean, they just basically they copied large chunks of various other constitutions and just somehow compiled it in a format.
You'd think so. And that's what I have been hearing for a really, really long time. But they actually did a lot of work. Like, yes, the writing took a lot of time. They also wanted to write it in beautiful penmanship and everything, and it is preserved in a museum.
It was physically written, right?
Yeah, of course. It's 1947. We had never been a country before. No matter what right-wingers tell you, India didn't exist. We were a bunch of kingdoms, and like a large part of the world, right? We were a bunch of different kingdoms. There was no self-governance till that time. That was the first time we were doing it. So, of course, we had to borrow from a lot of other countries' constitutions, but we also had to deal with a lot of issues that was specific to India. And it's an imperfect document, but a lot of work had to go into it. When I was reading the debates that were happening in the parliament, it was pretty impressive how much
Yeah,
of
of
work.
course. A lot of thought must have definitely gone
Yeah,
into it. I
yeah.
mean, even though I very flippantly say that they copied large chunks of it, they had to know exactly what parts of those constitutions to take
Yeah,
and how to retrofit them into the Indian context. Obviously, a lot of thought and hard work went into it. I have no doubts
yeah,
about it.
yeah. And there were certain issues as well. I mean, like all of history, it's not black and white. And we are going to talk about that. But we are going to kick off with the non-issue of RSS objecting to the Constitution. So on 26 November 1949, the Constituent Assembly finalized the draft of the Constitution. 4 days later, on 30th November 1949, the RSS English mouthpiece called Organizer, it's still in publication to date. Their website is worth checking out. It's so bad. It's so bad. Well, anyway, they published an editorial protesting the Constitution. And it said, I'm quoting, but in our Constitution, there is no mention of the unique constitutional development in ancient Bharat. Manu's laws. Manu's laws were written long before Lycurgus of Sparta or Solon of Persia. These are like Lycurgus is Spartan law and Solon is Persian law, right?
And just very briefly, for those who are wondering what Manu's laws are, Manu is the Indian equivalent of Adam, of the Adam and Eve
Yeah.
film.
And we'll get into
So
that. We will get into that, right? Because RSS talks about Manu's laws so very often. I really wanted to see what the fuck Manu's laws were. And oh my God, that's a whole other thing. We'll talk about that. I continue the quote. To this day, his laws are enunciated in the Manusmriti, excite the admiration of the world. It does not at all. Nobody fucking knows this. And elicits spontaneous obedience and conformity. Nope, it does not. This is a lie. The organizer continues, but to our constitutional pundits, that means nothing. This is because it does mean nothing. Like literally, it means nothing. This is a common thread with the right wing, right? They know words, but they actually do not have any capacity of thought, right? So if you look at what RSS was asking here, they were saying replace the constitution with the Manusmriti, right? Now, Manusmriti, like Sandy mentioned, it's the book of law of Hinduism, right? And as is the case with any religion that masquerades as legal instructions, it's an absolute piece of trash. It's nonsense. That's responsible for all of the inequalities and literal violence in our country, right? Now, as we know, the right wing doesn't read, but I do. So I read this fuck all book. Okay? I skimmed through it. It's not worth reading. It is one of the most painful. I have read Chetan Bhagat and Ravinder Singh, and this is one of the worst books. This is.
yay! If somebody is doing a drinking game, you can take a shot right about now.
This is one of the worst books I've ever read. It is so bad. But I've read enough to point out some deep-seated fallacies in adopting this nonsense as the Constitution, right? And that is what we will get into. But first, we are going to take a short break. We are going to go to ads. And I have no segue. Just listen to the ads and come back when we discuss what would have happened if Manusmriti was adopted as the Constitution. Welcome back from the ads. We were talking about how the right wing doesn't read but demands weird ass things. They wanted the Constitution to be substituted by the Hindu book of laws called Manusmriti. And we're going to talk about that now. Now, basic thing, right? If you're asking for a substitution, first understand what you are substituting. So what really is a constitution? It's just a document that lays down the framework, right? That details multiple different things. So it'll not just the fundamental political code, but also the structure of the country, the procedures and powers and duties of the government towards you and the government's institutions. And then it sets out your fundamental rights, the directive principles, how you should behave, and your duties, your fundamental duties, right, as citizens. So both the government and the citizens both need to come together in what is the constitution. It defines the functioning of a country, right? So everything that we need to function as a sovereign nation and people, that's there in the constitution. Does it still have faults? Of course. Can this be substituted by the Manusmriti? Fuck no. I mean, even if we ignore the fact, which we shouldn't, that to any sane person, it should be clear that religion cannot govern the state. There are some weird things in the Manusmriti, like fully confusing as things, right? And let me talk about the practical aspect of this, of why, even if you are a complete asshole who thinks that a religious Hindu law can be taken as is, as implemented as the constitution, practically it is not possible. And I will demonstrate with one example, which is the example of marriage, right? So under the constitution, there's nothing known as right to marry, but the Article 21 grants the fundamental right to privacy, and it has been established in like legal precedent, like the courts have established, that as an adult, you reserve the right to choose whom to marry if you choose to, right? Which is a completely obvious thing to happen. But here's what the Manusmriti says, okay? And I will link the Manusmriti. So I am quoting from the English translation of F. Max Muller's Laws of Manu. He's basically translated the Sanskrit version, okay? Because I'm not a right-winger, my sources are not trust me, bro. But if there is a lone person who has read this in Sanskrit and disagrees with what I'm saying, please reach out on don'tknowdocare1@gmail.com. One is numerical. Or DM us on Instagram or drop a comment on YouTube at DKDC Podcast. Instagram and YouTube handles are the same, DKDC Podcast. I live for right-wing meltdown, far-right meltdown. So please reach out with if you have read it in Sanskrit. I will get it validated by other people who know Sanskrit and tell you why you are wrong. Okay, back to what the Manusmriti says about your right to marry. Okay, I'm quoting here from F. Max Muller's translation. In connecting himself with a wife, let him carefully avoid the following 10 families. Be they ever so great or rich in kine as in cows. Okay, I did not know this. Rich in kine, horses, sheep, grain, or other property. Okay, and then he goes on to list this. Number one which neglects the sacred rites, in which no male children are born, one in which the Veda is not studied, one the members of which have thick hair on the body. Those which are subject...
Basically Anil Kapoor. Anil Kapoor can't marry under the laws of the Manusmriti.
I feel sad for my band's guitarist.
Oh God, what the fuck, Prakhar?
Now you have to get a photo of him so that we can post it on Instagram.
Absolutely not. We are not doing that.
Prakhar, please do that.
I'll do that.
It continues. Those which are subject to hemorrhoids, phthisis, I think is tuberculosis.
Hemorrhoids also. Half the Indian population has gone out of the way.
There's more. Weakness of digestion, epilepsy, or white and black leprosy. This is just 1 point out of the 10 points that he has. Okay.
This is just one.
It's just one. Second point. Let him not marry a maiden with reddish hair. For some reason, I don't know why. Reddish hair is...
Why are we hating on redheads, bro? Like, what happened?
It continues, let him not marry a maiden with reddish hair, nor one who has a redundant member.
Huh?
I don't know what this means. Like, redundant member in my head means a non-functioning dick. So what is this? What does this mean? I have no idea.
I also have a question.
Yeah.
I have also it mentions him. What about the female side of?
Oh no, we'll get to that. There's no woman does not have any. They don't have any call.
There's no women's side.
They
No.
don't count.
Oh.
They don't
They
count.
don't count. We don't count, dude.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
They don't count, dude. I don't
Which
know what you're talking about.
I mean, let's be honest, for RSS, that's perfect, right? Who else is going to marry RSS people? No, if they are not forced to, right? But anyway,
Then how the fuck are these RSS people populating?
they trick people. That is actually the love jihad. that is the love jihad. They are fully tricking women.
My God.
Okay, anyway, it continues. Not one who has a redundant member. No, I think this just hit me. I think it means somebody who is in any way discapacitated, either mentally or physically. Maybe like in their family. That's what it might mean.
Or by any chance does it mean virgins? I don't think so, though.
They would want virgins.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Okay. Let him not marry a maiden with reddish hair, nor one who has a redundant member, nor one who is sickly, nor one either with no hair on the body or too much. How you
Oh.
going to? Nor one who is garrulous or has red eyes. I do not know how they're going to find all of this.
Red eyes?
Has red eyes.
The first word you said, Geralis, what?
Red eyes.
Garrulous or garrulous. It means especially excessively talkative. So I'm out.
Oh.
Especially on trivial matters. It's garrulous.
Wow.
This was the second point. Third point. Nor one named after a constellation, a tree, or a river, nor one bearing the name of a low caste or of a mountain, nor one named after a bird, a snake, or a slave, nor one whose name inspires terror.
That literally takes out all names. What name is left after that?
It is
It's only
so
A.
random.
Hey, idhar aa. Oi.
It is
Or
random, dude.
or like how the people in Mumbai call everyone. That's how we call everyone. Hey,
It is so fucking random. Then he says, let him wed a female free from bodily defects who has an agreeable name. Listen to this. The graceful gait of a hamsa swan, right?
Swan,
Or of an elephant. A moderate quantity of hair on the body and on the head, small teeth and soft limbs. But a prudent man should not marry a maiden who has no brother, nor one whose father is not known, through fear lest in the former case she be made an appointed daughter, and in the latter, lest he should commit sin. Basically, he's saying that if you marry somebody who does not have a brother, you can do so if she is made an appointed daughter. Somebody with a son appoints her as a daughter. Or if you marry somebody whose father is not known, you will be committing a sin. Right? He continues. He, as in
What is
the
happening?
fuck all book continues. Dude, this is like, it's insane. This is the funny part. That's why I picked it up. There are disturbing portions. There are very, very disturbing portions.
I'm sure.
It continues. For the first marriage of twice born men. Do you all know who are twice born men?
no.
No? Okay. So twice born men are basically people who are, it was considered that you're born twice. Once when you're actually born, obviously. And second, for some reason, when you start pursuing your Vedic studies, that's when you're considered born again.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Might I add, I have gone through this entire process.
Oh God.
So I am twice born. So Ashmita,
Oh God.
Andy, you don't marry a girl with green and blue hair. Okay.
Per the Manusmriti, Ashmita was ruled out in point one only. So we don't need to go through all the other points at all.
Okay, so the book says, for the first marriage of twice born men, wives of equal caste are recommended. But for those who, through desire, proceed to marry again, the following females, chosen according to the direct order of the castes, are most approved. Okay. What does this mean? It's said in a very confusing
Approved
way.
by whom? Approved by whom?
By the Manusmriti, they are putting the guidelines. This is how you can choose. So they are saying, if you marry, the first time you marry, and this is a very important point, because for the longest time, these Hindu religious leaders have said Muslims are marrying multiple, they are allowed to take multiple wives. Your Manusmriti says you can take multiple wives. Right? So the condition is, when you marry the first time, then equal caste you have to marry. I'm not quoting what was said below that because it's a very, very confusing this thing. But when you marry the first time, you have to marry the person from the same caste. When you marry the second time, then there is an order of women, right? So, like, I'm quoting out one part. It says, it is declared that a Shudra woman alone can be the wife of a Shudra. She and one of his own castes, the wife of a Vaishya. Those two and one of his own caste, the wife of a Kshatriya. Those three and one of his own caste, the wife of a Brahmin. So, what does that mean? Like, if you're a Brahmin, you have to first marry Brahmin. Then you can marry Kshatriya. Then you can marry Vaishya. Then you can marry Shudra. So, you can marry 4 times fully. And there was no concept of divorce. So,
For those who are unaware, the 4 castes that Ashmita just mentioned, that's the Hindu caste system in effect.
yeah.
Basically. So those
Which
are the 4
was,
tiers, the social strata of people that they
Yeah.
were bifurcated into.
and this was introduced by the Manusmriti. You will also hear dumbass people who have never ever read this book say that, oh, castes, we have made that into a social problem. Castes were actually just professions. They were not. They were not. Manusmriti introduces this. Manusmriti clearly says that Shudras are born out of feet of Manu. Okay. Brahmins are born out of, I think, ribs or something. They detail out disgusting punishments. You're supposed to have, a Shudra is supposed to have shitty, like terrible surnames. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail later on, but it's not professional bifurcation. It is very much intended at taking the most untalented bunch, that is Brahmins, and putting them right at the top. And
Sorry, I feel attacked.
that's your problem. That is your problem. Nonsense. Okay. So, I mean, this was designed terribly, but anyway, back to this laws of marriage, right? I cannot list out all of those things because it would take up the entire episode, but the text goes on to list more such weird and arbitrary rules in the weirdest fucking ways possible. Right? For example, one law says, for him who drinks the moisture of a Shudra's lips, who is tainted by her breath, and who begets a son to her, no expiation is prescribed. Expiation as in, I mean, basically you have committed a sin from which there is no coming back. But the way they say it is really weird, right? So, forget about the deeply disturbing inequality this perpetuates. Let's look at the practical problems, right? There's a law that you're not allowed to marry someone with too much or too little hair. Who decides the appropriate level of hair? How do you decide that? Right?
Yeah.
Or someone with the gait of a
I'm sure
swan.
there were a bunch of people going around with rulers and measuring tapes, man. I don't know.
But there's no guideline here.
I mean, you can make that up as you see fit.
Sure.
See, Gillette would have been such a good business idea back then.
No,
Or
but you
beardo.
cannot. But you cannot also have too little hair. That's also a problem.
That's a beardo.
Fine. Or then they have this condition of someone with the gait of a swan or an elephant. Those are two very different animals with very different gaits. They walk completely differently. What is this? How do you compare this? These obviously do not have the capacity of being laws, right? They cannot.
What are you saying?
You cannot
I can
substitute.
I can completely see it working. What are you saying?
Right? But then there are also more serious issues with the Manusmriti. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure that that is why the RSS wants the Manusmriti to be implemented as the constitution, right? It very explicitly takes away all rights from the oppressed castes. Like, there is one law that if a Shudra insults a twice born man, his tongue would be cut out. There are more such really fucked up medieval punishments for crimes that live only in the fantasies of the Hindu right wing, right? Like, no remotely decent society can allow it. Insulting somebody, insulting a twice born man is not a crime. Like, get over yourselves, right?
I need to think about all the people who have insulted me in my life. I need to make a list and see who all this applies to. I
Then it
didn't know about this. You
mandates
should have told me this earlier only, Ashmita. I could have
there are
resolved
many,
so many of my issues.
there are many horrifying such clauses. Like, there are medieval
Please tell me all the
punishments.
clauses that are in my favor, no?
All of them are in your favor, Sandy. It's literally
That
the
is true.
Manusmriti. There's nothing in
That is
anybody
true.
else's favor. Right? Then it mandates women to give themselves to the handsome and to the ugly alike, as long as they are chosen as their husbands. So, fully an infringement on the rights of women, but also the wet dream of RSS and its followers, because how else are they going to get people? How else are they going to get laid? Like, firstly, their uniform. Secondly, their faces. Thirdly, their brains. Like, there's nothing going for them over there, right? So, of course, they want this, right? So, the RSS did not stop its protest against the Constitution in 1949, right? And I am taking from the Wikipedia page of RSS, but I have, for those of you who are anal about this thing for some reason, I have also validated it from other sources, right? You can do that homework yourself. It says, on 6 February 1950, the organizer published another article titled, Manu Rules Our Hearts. It's so embarrassing. I have second-hand embarrassment from this. Written by a retired High Court judge named Sankar Subba Iyer. He was actually quite a reputed judge. That reaffirmed their support for the Manusmriti as the final law-giving authorities for Hindus rather than the Constitution of India. It stated, even though Dr. Ambedkar is reportedly to have recently stated in Bombay that the days of Manu have ended, it is nevertheless a fact that the daily lives of Hindus are even at present day affected by the principles and injunctions contained in the Manusmriti and other Smritis. Even an unorthodox Hindu feels himself bound, at least in some matters, by the rules contained in the Smritis and feels powerless to give up altogether his adherence to them. I am inclined to agree, because clearly the caste system has perpetuated itself across the ages, and the punishments have changed, but we are still killing people. Like, we are actively killing people from the Dalit, Bahujans and Adivasi communities, right? In some cases, for riding a horse, for sharing water, shit like that. So I agree. Hindus have a lot of work to do. We clearly are following the Manusmriti to a disgusting level up to this date. And even if you're following one word from there, you have some questioning to do for yourself, right? So Dr. Ambedkar was very much against the Manusmriti, obviously, right? And this was, of course, a pain point for RSS. I'm quoting from a Deccan Chronicle article in 2019, right? This again came up in the recent past, right? After our wonderful government, right-wing government, came into power, the RSS obviously started demanding once more. And every time, you will notice this, every time the BJP has been in power or has been in serious opposition, they have done that. They have RSS has come back and said Manusmriti is our constitution, right? For example, so Deccan Chronicle writes about this. On Jan 1st, 1993, the RSS published a white paper. Okay, firstly, it's not a white paper. A white paper has research, right? They call it a white paper. There is no research, okay? So the RSS published a white paper denouncing the constitution as anti-Hindu. I don't know how. And outlining the kind of polity it wishes to establish in the country. In its foreword, Swami Harinand wrote, the constitution is contrary to the country's culture, character, circumstances, situation, etc. It is foreign oriented. He added, we will have to think afresh about our economic policy, judicial and administrative structure, and other national institutions only after nullifying the present constitution. It had to be discarded completely. The damage done by 200 years long rule of the British is negligible as compared to the harm done by our constitution. The conspiracy to convert Bharat into India continues. He lamented that we are known as Indians the world over and reminded the reader that the freedom struggle was fought in the name of Hinduism. Vande Mataram was our national song. In post-independent India, Hindustan and Vande Mataram have been exterminated. I cannot emphasize enough how every single word of this is wrong. The Vande Mataram fully exists. Hindustan fully exists. Like we literally sang the song in school. It was not a Hindu-specific song. Hindustan was not Hindu-specific. It was Hindi-specific, like a language specific, nothing to do with Hindus. The constitution is not contrary to the country's culture, character, circumstances, situation, like nothing. There are flaws, yes, but the flaws are in exactly the opposite direction that the RSS claims, right? And plus, the RSS, as we have established, doesn't read. So they don't know what's what, right? So anyway, even today we see the news pop up of RSS and its bootlickers demanding instituting the Manusmriti as the constitution of India. Now, any person who can Google shit can tell that the issues RSS brings up with the constitution is just wild, right? It is. You cannot take all of this seriously. Like, it's not even something you can debate, right? It's not like, oh, there are gray areas. Oh, we should look at something. I don't know. It's this weird fantasy of old men who want to oppress other people, right? It's odd. But there are some fairly serious issues in how the constitution came about and the laws that were derived from it. And now that's what we are going to talk about. Before that, any other comment on Manusmriti or RSS? I can't be the only one shitting on RSS, okay? You guys have to participate on that. It's very unfortunate that...
I'm thinking about all the opportunities I've missed because I didn't know the intricacies of the Manusmriti beforehand. So many opportunities lost.
You've lost it when the constitution was adopted and Manusmriti wasn't, Sandy. Now you can't do anything about it.
I know. I should have been around at that time. I would have advocated for it very vehemently.
You
So
still
many
can.
opportunities
The
lost.
RSS is still at it. You still can. You can fully...
Yeah,
Now you don't even have to wear those khaki shorts. You can actually wear full pants and go if you are uncomfortable
No,
with...
actually not. I want Sandy. I want to see Sandy in those shorts.
that time is
At
also
least
gone. There was a
once.
time when I wore them also.
Oh God.
So that was the
What?
phase of my life that's all gone. By the way, for the record, I never went voluntarily. I was forced to go there. I was dragged along with my father there, and we went to a few. I mean, at least in the place where I grew up, where Prakhar currently resides, there are a few community parks as any area has, and at least I don't know whether that thing still goes on, but when I was a kid back in school, so there were these regular Sunday RSS shakhas that took place in several of those parks. So if you've seen me in person, you would know for a fact that I am anti-exercise, and I was forced there. I was dragged there along with my father to quote unquote exercise, and we all looked like a bunch of nincompoops while doing that. I don't know how else to put it. It could have
I
what we
love
did.
the definition of exercise by RSS folks because they do those PT, right? Where you just put out your hands vertically and then horizontally and that. And then they take that
Yeah.
stick that they have and turn it around and everything. Essentially, it
No,
does
no.
nothing.
We used to do Surya Namaskars and all that shit also,
Oh, so
no?
you did actual
Yeah, yeah.
exercise. Ah,
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at least the RSS folks that I see on TV, it doesn't look like they've ever moved in their lives. Like, like the only thing that moves is their paunch 3 feet before they do. Like it's really difficult for me to admit that they have ever worked out. But I'm impressed that you all did Surya Namaskar for a change. Surya Namaskar is a
Yeah,
difficult
Surya
exercise.
Namaskar was just a very small part of the entire session. Mostly we used to sing songs and do other
What?
shit.
In exercises?
Uh,
Sandy,
We
you're
used
on
to
mute again.
salutation where they
Huh.
place your hand like almost the half Nazi salute
Nazi
thing that they
salute,
do,
yeah.
and they had some oaths and some songs and shit like that. So that was most of it. Yeah,
it still happens. It still happens in DDA Park, the park right behind my apartment.
that's
But
where I used to go also.
the
Dude,
group
there are
has is smaller now, and they don't wear their uniforms. They're in their casual clothes or whatever. People have grown old because new people are not joining, so they are
thank
slowly
God.
dying.
Thank
And
God.
they play like with football or games like dog in the bone.
Dog,
I think I'm
dog
getting
and
that
the
group
bone,
right.
not dog in the
Dog
bone.
and the bone. Yeah, and at the end they have this flag which they put up, and then they sing songs,
What songs do they
and
sing?
then they disperse. I have no idea. It's not the national anthem or whatever. I have no idea.
Just
But
patriotic songs in general.
But I
yeah.
mean, they had boycotted the national anthem. They had RSS after the constitution was adopted. They boycotted national anthem. They boycotted the flag.
Mhm.
So they were pretty anti-India
They
throughout.
have their own version of patriotic songs, to nobody's surprise, which they usually sing. Yeah.
Such a joke of a group, man, but they are so powerful. Like they are very very influential throughout, which speaks a lot about us as people, no?
And for those of you who are wondering, I don't do that anymore. This was like 25 years ago. Okay, so this was a very long time ago, and I was taken against my wishes. If you so just
Are there
setting the record straight now.
Are there any traces or any hints that you see that you keep doing without realizing that you're still doing it?
Dude, I barely get out of my house. Ask Ashmita.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like the RSS's short shorts, we'll also be taking a very short break right now, and we'll see you on the other side.
Now we're going to talk about the legitimate issues, right? Issues that RSS and its followers, bootlickers, are not at all concerned about, but issues that are genuinely serious issues. Not to say that that means that constitution deserves to be stripped down to nothing, but the formation of the constitution had some specific problems that we do need to discuss, right? So the constitution was rightly criticized for being an extension of the colonial laws. Not in the way RSS mentioned, because they didn't really mention any way. For example, in the debate that happened within the Constituent Assembly, right? For example, civil services. So civil services is government's version of middle management, right? Put a bunch of people who have never really done any work in positions to manage people who actually do the real work, right? Then there were laws like Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which was basically used heavily to treat gay people as criminals. Now, this was taken completely from the colonial British Penal Code, as is, word to word, right? Which criminalized all sexual acts against the order of nature. And the order of nature for British men seemed to be just basic missionary. So, can't imagine they were having a lot of fun, but okay. Right. So this is,
Missionary, not the position, the profession is what she's talking about.
no, I'm literally talking about the position. That was the only sex that was all right. Oral sex, anal sex, anything against the order of nature that was criminalized. So I'm literally talking about basic missionary
Bro,
position.
I thought you meant missionary as the profession, like
No, no.
missionaries going out and evangelizing people.
I don't know if they were having sex, but I meant as bland
No,
and
missionaries
basic.
definitely are not having sex.
Yeah, so they.
Missionaries
Yeah.
are saving themselves for the Lord.
All
So,
right.
you know,
Hmm.
They're saving their flowers.
So that was taken directly from British Penal Code. Then the anti-women laws, like marital rape, that is not considered as rape and still isn't. It's still not outlawed in India, taken completely from the British laws, right? Or dispossessing women on inheritance and weird mentions of how harassment is when a man outrages the modesty of a woman, whatever the fuck that means, right? Of course, a lot of this has changed over time, right? But a lot hasn't, right? And I want to talk about one specific issue that should have been addressed right at the beginning, which was during the formation of the drafting committee, right? So, drafting committee, which was a part of the Constituent Assembly, was a 7-member team tasked with the responsibility of drafting the Constitution. I want to show you the picture of the drafting committee first. So this is a picture of 7 men, right? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar center and forefront because he did lead everything. And thank fuck he was there because I cannot imagine what the rest 6 would have done, right? Not to say that these guys weren't very qualified people, but they were all men and they were all from really privileged backgrounds, right? So the other 6 members, there's Iyer, a
Was there
younger.
Radhakrishnan also, right? Sorry, you were saying
Who
names. It's
Radhakrishnan?
okay.
Who Radhakrishnan? There was no Radhakrishnan.
Left
I think you are
on left.
mentioning S. Radhakrishnan, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, right?
But
I
he
don't
wasn't
think
a
he was a
part of
part
the
of
drafting
the.
committee. No, he was not a part of the
Yeah, yeah.
drafting committee. There was Krishnaswamy Iyer, N. Gopalaswamy, a younger, K.M. Munshi, Muhammad Sadullah, B.L. Mitter, who was, obviously this is pre-independence, that was replaced by Madhav Rao. Okay, and then T.T. Krishnamachari. So D.P. Khaitan was replaced by Krishnamachari. Replacements happened because partition happened. Right? So the
Okay.
saving grace of this committee was clearly Dr. Ambedkar, a man from the Dalit community who had seen what a dumpster fire this country would have become as a Hindu nation, which a glimpse of it we are seeing it now. And he single-handedly ensured that we did not go down that route, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the members from very, very privileged castes, qualified, yes, most of them were either lawyers or civil servants, right? But they had served in some form or the other in administration, albeit under the British rule, right? Clearly, there were some problems, right? One was absolutely the fact that there's not a single woman in that, okay? Secondly, when you take a bunch of elite and expect them to form the governing principles of an entire country, you're not going to get principles that are extremely equal in terms of self-governance, right? So we're going to go into these issues. So we're going to start with this particular debate that was happening within the Constituent Assembly while the draft was being discussed. And Kengal Hanumantayya, the second Chief Minister of Karnataka, said this, and this is worth looking into. It's going to be slightly long. I'm giving you a heads up. Because of the way people talked, this was, I'm assuming, a translation from like different languages or mostly Hindi at that point of time into English. It was a very, very formal structure of speaking, but it's worth looking into what he said. So bear with me. He says, when I look into the list of members of the drafting committee and see their names, I must say that many of them are very respected names. Many of them are very able men, but only some of them were in sympathy with the freedom movement. Most of them, if I scrutinize the names of the members of the drafting committee, I find were the people who were not with the freedom movement in the sense in which many of our leaders were. They naturally brought their outlook and knowledge of things into the constitution making. That was not the kind of psychology or the knowledge that the Congress, for instance, or the country needed. I submit with all humility, they were no doubt very learned in several laws and rules that were framed before we got independence. They were very well versed in case law and code law. But that was not sufficient for the purpose of hammering out a constitution for a great country like India and its future. It is something like this. Okay, I'm pausing here. What he says, the analogy that he gives it's a slightly weird analogy, but also put it in context that this was when you had just gotten independence. And these guys had seen massive oppression. And then they were coming out of it. So the pride in the country and its independence was significantly higher, right? And the disdain for everything English was significantly more, which is very valid, right? I go back to the quote. It is something like this. We wanted the music of Veena or Sitar, but here we have the music of an English band. That was because our constitution makers were educated that way. I do not blame them. Rather, I would blame those people or those of us who entrusted them with this kind of work. Very sassy. I absolutely support this kind of sass.
A very valid point also. Extremely valid point.
Yeah. He continues, look at the way the structure of the constitution is built up. We were during the days of freedom struggle wedded to certain principles and ideologies as taught to us and as propounded to us by Mahatma Gandhi. The first and foremost advice which he gave in his picturesque language was that the constitutional structure of this country ought to be broad-based and pyramid-like. It should be built from the bottom and should taper right up to the top. What has been done is just the reverse. The pyramid has been reversed. The initiative from the provinces and states and from the people has been taken away, and all the power has been concentrated in the center. That is exactly the kind of constitution Mahatma Gandhi did not want and did not envisage. Whether or not we are in the right in having discarded our faith in this kind of democratic constitution, whether or not we are right in having discarded Gandhiji's idea of constitution making, it is too soon for us to judge. The future will judge for itself. This point, right, of centralizing power in the hands of few was brought up by multiple members of the Constituent Assembly. And it was a very pertinent problem. I will talk about the centralization a little bit later, but their basic contention was that if you are making the center the determining authority of everything, where they can surpass a lot of things that the states are doing, what you're not considering is India as a landmass is so massive with people that are so diverse. You can't do that, right? You can't. You are not in a position to be able to see on ground what is happening and take that decision. You are centralizing the power instead of decentralizing it, right? There was a member of the Constituent Assembly called Dakshayani Velayudan, she was honestly the most badass member ever. I read about her. By the way, this I am taking from this website called constitutionofindia.net. I am going to link it. I'm amazed that this is the first time I have come across this. It is a gold mine. It has recorded all of the speeches that were happening. It has the description of every single person who was a member of the Constituent Assembly. It has their histories. It is fantastic. It's so well documented, right? So I've taken a lot from here and I'm going to link it. And I highly recommend that whenever you have some time and you want to read up on the history, this is a better source than most other books that I've read on Indian history. All right.
Ooh.
So, okay. So the section about Velayudan, it says, she belonged to the Pulaya community, which was assigned to the rear end of the rigorously oppressive caste system. Pulayas were mostly engaged as lowly paid agricultural laborers and subjected to a range of humiliations, including being barred from using public roads, maintaining a certain distance from upper caste persons, and the women prohibited from covering their upper bodies with any garment. Velayudan emerged as a fierce critic of Congress politics, writing strongly against them in the All India Scheduled Caste Federation's weekly journal, Jai Bhim. At the same time, she was also critical of the AISCF, the All India Scheduled Caste Federation, right? She was also critical of the AISCF and B.R. Ambedkar's politics, specifically their demand for separate electorates for the scheduled castes. I want to give a caveat here in case anybody misunderstands. She was critical, not in the sense that, oh, we don't need separate electorates. She was critical, saying, if you don't address the psychological and the educational aspect, none of this separate electorate shit is going to work. And she mentioned that in the parliamentary debates as well, right? Basically, she faced sexist attacks from both Congress and AISCF, right? Now, we tend to do this. We tend to either glamorize a particular ideology a little too much, or we tend to completely demonize it. And there's only one ideology worth demonizing. You all know what it is, except that everybody has black and white. So AISCF was doing a lot of good work, still men driven, right? We are talking about 1949, right? We have to understand all of these nuances as well, that they still had problems, right? I continue the quote from that website. Fervent petitions were addressed to the Congress High Command by opposing her nomination to the Constituent Assembly. In spite of these, she was elected to the body in 1946. In 1945, she had also been nominated to the Cochin Legislative Council. She did a lot of kick-ass work. A lot of work. At a point of time when the Pulaya community was... it is amazing that they could think of anything beyond their own survival, considering how the rest of the country was treating them. Right? It's amazing. Velayudhan's point about the centralization of the constitution that we were talking about is worth quoting, right? So I'm going to read that out. The general criticism is that the draft is a replica of the 1935 Act, but we cannot forget the fact that we have got a legacy of the British imperialist administration, which goes by the name of the parliamentary system of government. The trouble was that we were depending on it, and we will have to depend on it even after the constitution is put into operation. Very practical viewpoint. She did not expect things to change overnight, right? It was impossible. It was 200 years of rule that we were getting over, right? I continue about her quote. The trouble arose from one point, namely, just as the British administrators who wanted to keep India centrally and provincially as a single unit, we in our bewilderment and anxiety tried to bring India centrally and provincially as a strong unit, and this centralization of power has led to all the troubles. There are two ways of making India a strong unit. One is by the method of centralization of power, and the other is by decentralization. But centralization is possible only through parliamentary system, which now goes under the safe words democratic methods. But in this draft, we can't find anything that is democratic, and decentralization is totally absent. She continues, it is a great tragedy that in making the constitution of a great country with 30 crores of people, with a great culture behind it and the great principles and teachings of the greatest man of the world on the surface, we were only able to produce a constitution that is totally foreign to us. The arguments put forward by the chairman of the drafting committee, she's talking about Dr. Ambedkar. Arguments put forward by the chairman of the drafting committee are not at all convincing. He has said that we are very late in making the draft constitution, but I can cite examples which will show his arguments are not sound. The drafting committee recommends that the President of the Union can nominate 15 members to the Council of States. Then another plea is that the term of the legislature should be more than 4 years. There is another misnomer in the draft, and that is about the selection or election of governors. The committee feels, let me read this out and then I will explain what she's talking about a little bit more. The committee feels that if the governor and the chief minister, who is responsible to the legislature, are elected by the people, then there will be friction between the two, right? But the remedy they have suggested is worse than the disease. There is a panel, and the president is to select from the panel one person as a governor. If the center happens to have a Congress president, and if a province is having a socialist majority, suppose the Socialist Party recommends 3 from their party. So 4 people would be nominated and the president would elect the governor, right? So suppose the Socialist Party recommends 3 from their party and 1 from the Congress. Certainly the president at the center will select the congressman to be the governor. Certainly this will lead to friction. We find that this direct recruitment to governorship is taken from the Government of India Act, and it shows that we have not left out even a comma from it. This is such an important aspect, right? And it is wild to me. She was a part of the Constituent Assembly. She was very clearly coming from the ground up. She was not involved in the drafting. It's a very important point. Like, the governor is put into power by the president, right? The chief minister is elected by the people. If you are not allowing people to take decisions for their democratic situations, right? How is it a democracy? We criticize the electoral vote systems in US. Ours it's different, but it is same in a way, right?
Theoretically, yes, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, there are issues, right? And that did arise from the fact that centralization happened, right? When the Constitution was formed, we were obviously in an extremely vulnerable situation. We had just gotten rid of the British. We had gone through the massively traumatic event of partition. And we were grappling with the concept of being a country for the first time. We had never been a country before, right? So we needed the union to have certain powers. But as the assembly members pointed out, not just Velayudhan, but other members as well, like I've read the debates, and this was a constant train of thought, that not granting sufficient autonomy to the states meant that this small group of elites was determining everything for everyone, including the people that they did not represent. And that was bound to create problems, right? Like, Velayudhan was completely right. Like, what she said in 1949, we are still proving correct, right? For instance, in 2020, the farm laws were amended to allow farmers to sell their produce directly to agribusiness companies at a predetermined rate. Do you guys remember this? In 2020, this would happen. So the BJP government passed this, and they would ease the control of the center over the production and sale of agricultural produce. That's what they said. And the neoliberals were overjoyed about it because of their delusion that's called free market, right? But the country saw massive protests by the farmers because it was so simple and it was so easily visible, right? One, this would take away the guarantee of the minimum price that the government sets. Now, that itself has a lot of issues, right? But there is a minimum price. You can build on it. You can make that system better, right? You take that away and put them at the mercy of businesses. Historically, has anybody ever thrived when they have been put at the mercy of businesses and their top brass? That has never happened, right? In a decentralized structure, the states would still be able to levy taxes or regulate the markets that benefit the local economies. They would consider the needs, and not just like economic needs, right? Social needs and the ecological needs. Like, especially in agriculture, every state differs from one another, right? It's very different growing something in Punjab versus growing something in the Northeast, right?
Yeah.
And considering we are such a large fucking landmass, it would absolutely need to be governed state to state. All of that goes away when the center can just with one act overrule the decisions made by the states. I am not saying that a decentralized state-led structure is perfect. It would still need work, but it is definitely a better starting point than centralizing all of the power with the center or the majority of the power. Like, they have the power to overrule a lot of things, right? Technically, agriculture is under state, but if you are at the center, you have the power to overrule it, right? This veto is problematic. And my argument is that the key reason for this disconnect, again, I would remind everybody, I am not a journalist, I am not a historian. This is my inference, right? the key reason for this disconnect between what the country needed and the draft seemed to be that, except Dr. Ambedkar, the entire drafting committee was arguably quite disconnected from the realities of the country. They were from highly, highly privileged backgrounds, right? Even if you look at the entire Constituent Assembly, right, there were only 15 women in the Constituent Assembly. Not one of them were a part of the drafting committee, which was wild. Why not? Out of the 299 members of the Constituent Assembly, 149 were Hindus. Majority were from privileged castes. Basically, it was their version of MBAs launching tech startups, right? And don't get me wrong, the Constitution was exceptional work. It was really, really difficult, and there was very little precedent to go on, right? This RSS narrative of, oh, we just took our colonial hangover and put it on paper. No, friend, that's not what happened. There was so much work that was going on. But that doesn't mean that there weren't issues. And like all of history, you need to know the good and you need to know the bad. And the real bad. So just remember that there are real issues with the Constitution, but it is not even a little bit of what the right wing claims. The only thing that is constantly black and white in history is that the right wing is always wrong. You can just assume that constantly. Everything else is black and white.
I think our viewers
So
and listeners
poetic.
are drunk by now. I think they're drunk by now.
I mentioned
Out
at
of
the
their
top.
wits.
I mentioned at the top of
Out
the
of their
episode.
fucking wits. I don't think they can make any sense of what's coming next now from here on.
I
Everything is
mentioned.
just absolute drivel. Absolute drivel here on.
Well, good thing that I finished my topic then. but I mentioned right at the top that this was going to be like a large part of this episode was going to be about the right wing. So I don't know. If somebody made a drinking
This
game
was
out
a
of that, it's
drinking
on
game.
them. It was on them.
Good for them. Good for them.
Just in case you plan on having a drinking game along with this episode, 26th January is a dry day in India. So might as well stock up on that liquor a day or two
Wow.
beforehand.
It's not.
Yeah.
I love how we consider dry days. It's not, let's not drink this day. It is, oh, the previous night we need to buy everything.
Dry day literally means that you cannot get your hands on liquor officially or
Yeah.
legally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's basically what a dry day is.
No, I think now before, I think 2 days or 3 days before the dry day, they shut the liquor stores. If I'm not,
Is
if I'm
it?
correct. Yeah, because the trend started, no, that people were stocking up a day before.
They will stock up a week before. People will do this.
There's
They're,
always
they're
a
already,
workaround.
Yeah.
they're already stocked up, you know.
You know, I did not touch upon this, but prohibition was a major discussion in the Constitution because Gandhi was pro-prohibition. Hey. And the other people were like, fuck no, we can't do that. So that was a major thing.
Yeah, that was unreasonable. Why, bro? Very unreasonable. Why do you want to ban alcohol?
Also, prohibition doesn't have a great history. Like the US,
Also, prohibition never fucking worked.
it never works. Never works. And I am in general anti-prohibition of anything. I think things should be regulated. Kids should not get their hands on a lot of things. It
Yeah,
should be
yeah.
regulated. But if adults want to fuck up their health, that's on them.
Yeah.
Prohibition doesn't help.
Also, history has time and time again proven that prohibition never works. The more you prohibit something, the more illegally it
Yeah.
gets circulated around in the system.
Yeah.
So
And
why would you want? Might as well regulate that instead of banning it. No.
yeah. And it increases inequality. Like all the punishments are for poor people. Like the people in US, if you read the prohibition history, people who prohibited, who went ahead and actually put it into effect, they would be the ones who would buy illegal alcohol.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So it basically stems from, infantilizing people and oppressing people, and I'm fully against it. But yeah, so that was about the Indian Constitution and issues and non-issues. And I again strongly recommend that you all go to that website. We'll link it at the show notes or episode notes, and you can check it out. And It details out a lot about the Constituent Assembly, about the formation of the Constitution, and it's definitely worth a read. And now my recommendation of the week. Recommendation time. So this is something that I came across very, very lately, and Sandy, it's because of Sandy that I saw this. It's an amazing, fantastic podcast called What Now by Trevor Noah. Okay, we watched a couple of episodes on YouTube. It is so great, dude. The conversations are with, so one of my favorite conversation was two of my favorite conversations. One was with Jon Stewart, and the other one was with, I forgot. Sandy, who's the last week?
John Oliver.
I love these guys. It was
Trevor
fantastic.
Noah and John Oliver. Oh God.
Yeah, that was so, and even Jon Stewart,
Fun.
right?
Nice.
So fun. And these guys, they are so thoughtful, kind, well-read people.
And funny.
And super funny. So it's taking really serious subjects and discussing it I was watching Jon Stewart's episode and I genuinely felt like crying so many times. It is beautiful. And it's also hilarious. I would strongly recommend looking this up and watching the episodes of What Now by Trevor Noah.
Awesome. And you might end up wondering what now for the episode. What now is the end of the episode. And on that note, we'll be taking your leave. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.